Hello, Algebra 2 folks, and welcome to graphing sine and cosine functions with horizontal shifts. This time you're going to need green. We need green for horizontal shifting. The red is our midline, and remember the red is the midline, which is the vertical shifting, and the blue is the amplitude. So you need red, green, and blue. The amplitude is in blue. That's the height of the cosine and sine graphs. Okay, so if you have your 3 pins in your notes, we're going to get started. I do want to make sure that you are graphing them in your notebook correctly. I've noticed that sometimes we're getting a little sloppy and we're making mistakes in our notebooks. And when we make mistakes in our notebooks, guess what happens? That's the way we practice it. If that's the way we practice it, that's the way we'll do it on the test. And then we don't do so well on the test. So slow down when taking your notes. Make sure your notes are correct, or I will have you redo them from now on. All right, here we go. So the steps for graphing sine and cosine functions with horizontal shifts added. Okay, so that horizontal shifting, we are going to do that in green. So I should have highlighted that in green. Here we go. I'll go back and use green. Okay, horizontal shifts are in green. All right, so horizontal shifts, that's inside. Okay, so we still have our amplitude, we still have our B, that affects our period and our increment, and now we're going to shift it either left or right. Okay, so when we have a negative, that's a right shift, and when we have a positive, a left shift would be a plus sign, because remember, it's the opposite of what's inside the parentheses. All right, so how do I determine amplitude? Remember, that is the absolute value of A, and so that is your height, and that is in blue. Okay, how do we determine the period? Again, that is the same thing that we've done in the past. That's 2 pi over B. Okay, and then the increment is 1/4 times the period. Okay, and now what we will do is we will determine our horizontal shift. Again, our horizontal shift is in green. So if we are adding H, we will move to the left. If we are subtracting H, we will move to the right. Okay, so it's the opposite. Okay, and then you use the information from steps 1 through 4 to label your axis thoroughly and graph your function using your transformations. Okay, so we're not doing midline today. We're not changing our midline today. We are doing the midline, but the midline today, because we're not doing any vertical shifts today, our midline is going to stay at that 0. All right, so let's do a couple of examples. All right, so we have amplitude. Amplitude is the absolute value of -2, which is 2. Our period is going to be 2 pi over the number out in front of this horizontal shift is our B. Okay, so 2 pi over 2, that is going to equal 1 pi. Take 1/4 times 1 pi, and you'll get 1 pi over 4. That's our increments. Okay, so then our horizontal shift is going to be in green, and this is going to be a right shift of pi over 2. All right, so now let's go ahead and graph our function. And remember, it's a right horizontal shift because opposite of subtracting would be adding. Okay, so we'd have to go right pi over 2. All right, so our midline is going to be 0 today because we're not going to be changing our vertical. That's tomorrow when we move it all together. So our midline is going to be 0, And because we're not changing our midline, we can go ahead and take care of amplitude right away. Amplitude is up 2 and down 2. Okay, you need to label those, and you need to make sure they're about equal distance from each other. All right, I can go ahead and label my increments. My increments are by 1/4. So we have 1/4 pi, we have 1/2 pi, because that'd be 2/4, which would be 1/2, be 3/4 pi, and we've got 1 pi. You know, this is our cycle. We should repeat in 1 pi. Then we have negative 1/4 pi, we have negative 2 pi over 4, we have negative 3 pi over 4, and we have negative 4 pi over 4, which is negative 1. Okay? Now, we have to take care of our vertical shift. So, our vertical shift is going to go right pi over 2, which is the same thing as 2 pi, 2 pi over 4. Yep, this is 2 pi over 4. So I will draw a vertical line saying I'm moving right pi over 2. So that means I'm going to move 2 increments over. Now this is where I start. Okay? This is my starting point. I don't start on the y-axis anymore. I start at my shift, wherever I'm shifting. Okay, now grab your pencil and we'll go ahead and draw the graph. It's a sign, but it's a negative sign. That means I will start in the middle and I will go down to the right, up, okay, and then I will go back. When I go back behind the shifting, I will go up to the top. Now don't forget about your middle, your increment here at 0, 0. I go down to the middle, I go way down to the bottom, back to the middle, back to the up, and back down again. And that will give me 2 cycles. Okay? If you want to do 2 cycles a different way, that's completely fine. Sometimes what I do is I start my shift, and then I'll do 4 on this side of the shifting and 4 on the back side of the shifting. So I actually should have went 2 more this way, which would be 1 pi. This would be 5 pi over 4 and 6 pi over 4. And then I would have kept going. That is technically how I should get my 2 cycles. Okay, so then I could have stopped here instead of moving on to these 2. So technically what we should do is we should do 4 increments on the right of our shift and 4 increments on the left, okay? But hopefully you have at least 2 cycles so you can see how the graph is working. All right, so the domain is all reals. X such that X is all reals. And the range then would be -2 to 2 inclusive, or -2 is less than or equal to y, which is less than or equal to 2. If you wanted to use interval notation, it'd be -infinity to infinity. All right, let's do one more. All right, so we got amplitude changing, and we got period changing. We've got some horizontal shifting happening. Start with amplitude. The amplitude is the absolute value of 3, which is 3. The period is 2 pi divided by b. So 2 pi divided by 1/2 is the same as 2 pi times 2 over 1, which is 4 pi. So our periods are 4 pi. Our increment is 1/4 times 4 pi. So our increments are 1 pi. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and draw our x and y axes. Okay, our horizontal shift is going to be left pi, opposite of positive, so left pi. So when we do our increments here, I'm going to shift it left pi, that's negative pi. Okay, draw my vertical line, and then this would be negative 2 pi, this would be negative 3 pi, this would be negative 4 pi, negative 5 pi will put us at a cycle. And then 0, don't forget about 0, and then we've got 1 pi, 2 pi, and 3 pi. Okay, our midline is not changing today because we don't have any vertical shifting. So that's going to be at 0. Our amplitude is up 3, 1, 2, 3, and down 3. Okay, and now we will go ahead and grab our pencil. Okay, and now we are going to do cosine. Now remember, we don't start at the y-axis anymore because we are shifting this left up increment of pi. So we're going to start at pi on this green line, but cosine starts high, so we're going to start up at the top. Then at 0, 0, we're going to go down to the middle, down to the bottom, back up to the middle, back up to the top. That will be our one cycle. Okay, kind of missed that right there. Okay, I'll erase that. And then we do the other side of the cycle. Oops, go backwards here. Erase that. And then redraw it here. And we're going to go back down, down to the bottom, back to the mid, back up to the tippy top. We have a W, but it's shifted to the left pi. All right, our domain is all reals. Or negative infinity to infinity. And our range this time is negative 3 to 3, or negative 3 is less than y, which is less than or equal to 3. All right, so that's how we do vertical or horizontal shifts without the vertical shift. We'll come back and practice those horizontal shifts, and then tomorrow you'll be working with, or the next day you will be working with every all horizontal shifts and vertical shifts with amplitude and increment changes and period changes. So hopefully you took good notes, and we'll see you back tomorrow. Thank you.